It's not been too long since that news came from the COP that Jurgen Klopp will not be the manager for Liverpool following next year. He took over as the coach in 2015. Shane Dias, my colleague, and I will be talking to you about whatever details we managed to gather as far as this particular move of Jurgen Klopp is concerned, and also try and answer the big question that's being asked at the moment as to who comes in as replacement for Jurgen Klopp. Remember, as we'd earlier told you as well, it's not just Jurgen Klopp, it's the entire backroom staff, including the elite development coach as well, and the fitness coach as well, the assistant coaches, all of them will be leaving along with the Jurgen Klopp, and we'll try and answer those questions along the way. First things first, Shane. Nobody saw this coming, but how do you look at this particular move from Jurgen Klopp? We heard the only thing that we've heard from him in essence, as far as what the reason is. He says that he's lost all energy. He doesn't have more energy to continue at the club where he's felt extremely loved. He's loved the fan base. He's loved everything about the club, but he's now run out of steam. It seems.
Yeah, so I mean, two reactions that I thought of, or which came to my mind first off, is holy moly, this is huge news that came out of absolutely nowhere. There was not one media leak, there was not a suggestion anywhere. I mean, the last contract that he had signed was actually an extension to 2026, which means that definitely this was a decision that has come a little out of nowhere and a little suddenly, even by Klopp's own standards. So it does show that it's pretty consistent with what it is that he said, which is what he said. I feel burnt out. And I mean, we know Klopp, all right? He's an intense individual. We've seen that he tends to live every moment on the touchlines, and he's been in this job since 2015. Correct me if I'm wrong. So
2015.
that's nearly a decade in the job, and by the time he's done with it, yes, it'll be nearly a decade. And in by modern management standards, that's a lot. There's no two ways about it. It's a big amount of time. That was one reaction. Second was, of course, this is going to be a major, let's say, transition period for Liverpool because again, they went into this season thinking, you are needed to renew or get in a few more players. You saw departures. You saw a raft of departures. A lot of contracts weren't renewed. They sold the likes of was it Fabinho, Henderson was sold. In came in Alexis McAllister and Endo, Waitamo. All of these guys came in, so you knew that they were kind of in a rebuild phase under Klopp. And Klopp had said very clearly that look, I want to lead another title charge, which potentially he could be doing. Don't forget, Liverpool right now are on top of the table. But I'd say whoever now comes in next has a mammoth task because again, no one left really to oversee the transition. Not only has every member of his backroom staff left, but even their sporting director, someone who had been appointed pretty recently under Klopp himself, is also gone. So that means there's no one to oversee that transition, and these things can be scary. I mean, when a manager this big departs, unless you have a stable structure in place, that transition can be very hard. I mean, you of all people as a Manchester United fan would know or understand that pain. If you don't have a proper management succession plan in place, then it can be tough. And I don't think
It,
Liverpool was planning for his succession.
it, it's one of the biggest criticisms you mentioned about United. It's one of the biggest criticisms that there hasn't been any sporting director who's been appointed over all these years. And you know how big a coordination job, let's say, that the sporting director then has with the board, and of course the manager. Then, so it's going to be a big blow now to Liverpool, and then to get the right appointment, and we'll get to who those appointments could be then. But to match up to the kind of level that Jurgen Klopp has said. Remember, he's won a Premier League title, and in fact, putting an end to the wait which had extended up to 3 decades for Liverpool. He got them that title, made them serial contenders, one can say, because right now as well, as Shane pointed out earlier. They are in the running for another title. They're top of the Premier League with a 5 point lead, having a game in hand at the moment, and they're leading Manchester City right now. He's won the Champions League as well. He finished second, lost only by 1 point in the 2022 season. So again, he's been a consistent performer, and one can say that perhaps yes, it was a slow start to his Liverpool career, I'd say, because the first two seasons I think he finished seventh and eighth respectively, but after that it's only been the upward trajectory. And for any boss to now come in, firstly, a lot needs to be fixed now. A lot needs to be fixed. Of course, in the dressing room, and of course at the board level as well, things need to be fixed. So in the boardroom as well as in the dressing room, things need to be fixed on. Then that big question, whether or not they can then sustain, given all these changes, can Liverpool then sustain to be at the top? That's going to be big thing in these raft of changes that are in the offing now for Liverpool. I think it's a big blow, and of course you're going to see very soon as to how the club really takes it. Of course, the fans would want to see him get a good send off, but we're only halfway through the league, a little over halfway through the league, still far away from the business end. But what an ideal sort of send off it could be for Jurgen Klopp if he was to, let's say, match up to that 20th league title, which Liverpool are desperately chasing at the moment. It would be something momentous, not just for the club, but a more than ideal send off for Jurgen Klopp.
I mean, look, don't forget, currently Liverpool are very much in contention for all four trophies, all four major trophies.
True.
They did come very close to a quadruple in the 2021-22 season when I remember
22, yeah,
rather,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was 21-22 because I remember
They,
much
they
to
still
my
they
chagrin.
still barring the Premier League, I think they still finished with the double, right?
They finished with a double, and I remember it clearly because they beat Chelsea in both domestic cup finals. It was in the
Yeah,
League Cup, or what's now known as the Carabao Cup, as well as the FA Cup. And incidentally, this year's Carabao Cup final is once again a Chelsea Liverpool one. So that's
the
very going
25th
to be
of
very
February,
interesting.
right?
Yeah, 25th of February is the date. So they're in the final of the Carabao Cup, still alive in the FA Cup, leading the Premier League, and of course, part of the Champions League knockouts as well. So they did chase a quadruple in 21-22, came very close to achieving it. And, at least if not a quadruple, they could have potentially done a treble because I think they only lost the league on the final day. So, again, I
Yeah,
think that is
when City had to come back when they were hosting Villa, they were 2-0 down. What a
correct.
maverick day of football that was.
That was a crazy final day. So obviously, I think if you're Liverpool, you're thinking, okay, to win another league, get that 20th. That's definitely going to be the ideal send off. And I think if I'm looking at it from Klopp's perspective, that's great. You've actually done something that's a rarity in today's day and age when it comes to football. You've walked away before you got sacked. I mean, normally speaking, what happens? You'll either see a manager's contract not be renewed if it's up for this thing and they feel like going a different direction, or clubs are in no way reticent to sack their managers. He's not getting sacked. He has 2 years of his
He,
contract left.
the only other manager I can think of at the moment that neither the board or the club, let's say for that matter, and the fan base would want to let go of is
I can guess.
Simeone, because that's the kind of association that a Simeone has had with the Atletico fan base. I can't really think of too many managers otherwise.
Pep City. Pep City.
Pep at City, yes, he still yeah spent he's also has he no I think he's still nearing on that decade mark. It was 15, a season
Yes.
before
Yes.
Klopp, I think. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's
No, I think
also
13, 14, 15. I think it was no. His first season was the either 15. No, it was the 16, 17. So he joined after Klopp.
after.
16, 17
Yeah,
was his
so
first
he's
year. I
still
remember because that
yeah,
was
yeah,
the year Chelsea won the title. They won the Premier League that year with Conte. And I remember they had beaten City. That year, I think Claudio Bravo was the keeper for Man City. They signed him for 1 year. He was utterly
yes, for
hopeless
1 year.
and binned him off after a year.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
yeah, he's
again,
still
that's another
reaching the
thing that
decade
Pep
for
has
him.
done. Pep has done miracles over there. In those 6 years that he spent, 7 years, he's won the title 4 times, gunning for a fifth. So
Yeah.
again, unmatched things. But you talk about the best managers in the league at the moment. After Pep Guardiola, you have to put Jurgen Klopp right up there. I don't think there's going to be any debate about that. He's definitely been Mr. Consistent now in the Premier League, and I remember Jose Mourinho saying that finishing second in the Premier League with Man United was one of his biggest achievements. Klopp's been doing that consistently, so that's just to put into
Yeah.
perspective how good he has been this whole while. But let's just take this conversation forward now, Shane. A big hole to fill now for Liverpool. Not too many managers in the fray as well. Jose Mourinho getting available. Just about a couple of days back, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
But when you talk about
I think we seem to be having a few issues with the stream.
Yeah, Shane, am I audible? Am I still audible?
You're audible, but your camera has kind of tilted sideways, and your audio and your video is frozen.
One second. Why don't you take the conversation for? I'll just try and fix this.
Yeah, just fix this because now your video seems to be working, but it's still inverted. So I guess the
Yeah,
key
yeah.
thing now, which Harshit was trying to point out, is that succession planning. More often than not, it tends to happen with a lot of clubs that they will, of course, have some sort of a plan in mind for succession. But I don't think Liverpool were going to have this sort of a conversation until at least the 25-26 season, which would have been when Klopp's contract, as it were, was going to run out. So obviously, there was never going to be any sort of a conversation up until that point because he had, along with the club, of course, come to an agreement to renew his contract. So definitely that was something that, they knew that they would go forward and maybe look at things from there and thereabouts. But now, who are the names available? You mentioned Mourinho. I don't think the club are touching him, and I don't think he's touching the club. I mean, sure, he probably wouldn't mind, but I think one thing, if there's one thing that Liverpool's owners have shown, they want, I think, something that's more long-term sustainable. Neither of which comes with Mourinho. He's neither long-term nor sustainable.
The other name, Shane, I can think of is Jabi Alonso. That'll be one
Xavi,
name. They'll be
yeah, there's a
interested. In
Xavi
fact,
Alonso.
I was going through a
Yeah, carry
report
on, carry on.
which, which does suggest that I think he's allowed to leave in the summer of 24 to the three clubs that he's played in the past with. That's to say Liverpool, Bayern, Real Madrid. There is a part in
Hmm.
his contract which allows him to leave in this summer to these three clubs. It'll be very interesting if
Very
that clause
interesting.
does get activated. If an approach does get made from Liverpool, I'd still be a little circumspect if I was to think from Liverpool's point of view at the moment. Yes, he's doing a fabulous job at Leverkusen, but maybe I want somebody with a little more pedigree.
The problem is, who is that person available with pedigree? There aren't
Yeah,
that many. Will you go for a Zinedine Zidane? I doubt, because with Zidane, I know he did miracles at Real Madrid, but I think there he was more of a man manager than he was a tactical manager. So I'm not too sure about him. I think the jury's a little bit out on him. Much as I respect him as both a player and a manager, I still want to see
yeah.
what he does in a different league. Another name I could think of potentially, if you're looking at it, players, if he was still on the market, I could have gone for a Tuchel, but I think he's okay at Bayern. Another name who I'm thinking of, because again, I'm thinking of players or managers, let's say, who would have a similar philosophy, high pressing, the gegen pressing, the German style, let's say. Maybe they could go for a Julian Nagelsmann, get him out of his contract with Germany. That might be a
Germany.
possibility, but again, that's again that's a big if, and it's also a bit of a risk given how his time at Bayern Munich went. Could they go for let's say, what is the name of the guy who was managing Bayern before him? He was also Hansi Flick. Might go for a Hansi Flick. I know that
Flick,
Flick's
Flick. But is
reputation
Flick
was
available at
good.
the moment?
Well, he was sacked by Germany and he hasn't actually taken another job after that. So I think he should be
Uh,
available. Because if you're looking at it, see, I think Liverpool's ideal plan, their ideal plan was that Klopp leaves in a couple of years and maybe by then someone like a Steven Gerrard would be ready. But considering Steven Gerrard is managing in Al Ittifaq in Saudi Arabia, I highly doubt they're going
yes,
for him. So I think they'd have
yes.
to go for someone who's established, someone who can take it forward. That's why I was saying potentially a Hansi Flick or a Nagelsmann could be favorites. Xavi, I would like to see. Definitely, I think what we've been seeing from him as a manager at Bayer Leverkusen has been nothing short of phenomenal. But again, I think he might want to take a little bit more time before he makes the jump into a club that big. Because again, at Leverkusen, he's allowed,
Just,
let's say, a long road.
just a wacky sort of or an unusual sort of a
Hmm.
name coming to my mind at the moment. We know gone are those days where you see players being traded between rival clubs,
Hmm.
forget, let alone managers. But now at least the latter is starting to happen. What about Ralph
Yeah.
Ranić, who was at Manchester United? Because again,
Hmm.
they say that Jurgen picked up the
Yeah,
Gegen
yeah,
press
Ragnick,
from
Ragnick is, yes, correct, correct, correct. Ragnick is basically all the coaches who I named, by the way, Flick, Tuchel, what's his name, Nagelsmann, even Klopp, all are basically disciples of Ragnick. But
disciples
will a Ragnick
exactly.
come back to full term? Will a Ragnick come back to full time management? No, I don't think he's very keen. You know why? Because prior to the Manchester United job, he was basically a consultant for the Red
Consultant.
Bull. Yeah, he was he in fact had like a director of football role within the Red Bull football
Exactly,
division.
exactly. I think yes, it's those kind of roles that he's been looking at off late. So maybe I'm just, but again,
He
mind
is
change,
managing
I
a
guess.
side, by the way. Right now, he is managing a team, but it's the Austrian national team. He made them qualify for the Euros. So again, it's not to say he's not open to management, but I think again, international management's a little more relaxed. So although considering Liverpool don't really have a director of football, Ragnick would be a perfect appointment for that. Perfect appointment.
So yeah, all those
Manager.
things are going to be much debated about, much talked about going forward as well. But Shane, let's just try and wrap this up with that.
Mhm.
How big do you think Liverpool can maintain the sort of tempo consistency next year now, or is it too big a hole to be filled in, let's say, a season's time for them?
I think it really depends on who comes in. Look, I think they're going to be very motivated this year. They want to give Klopp a good send off, potentially win that 20th title, and potentially anything else they can. Can they maintain the same intensity? I think it'll really depend on who the manager is. I think a good transitional choice is always important in that regard. Who that person could be. I mean, you saw, and to give you context, one you'd be familiar with, how a title-winning team in 2012-13, Manchester United responded to a Moyes wasn't very good. I mean, he made a team that was actually potentially good enough to win a title, not be good enough to be finishing in the top six, seven. So I mean, it really depends on who they get. I know Liverpool have a lot of
Which
younger
is what I
players
fear,
now.
let's say, with the Xabi Alonso at the moment is while he is doing everything right at Leverkusen at the moment, I think given where Liverpool are at the moment, you need somebody with pedigree to take it forward, which
Correct.
is my only reservation with Alonso. Had I seen, let's say, a little more of Alonso, maybe at a Leverkusen itself for a couple of more years, or let's say clubs like Valencia, Benfica, think clubs of that ilk as well. I think I would have taken that punt if I were Liverpool.
Hmm.
But then I
Correct.
think the sample size isn't big enough, which is why I need somebody, let's say, with a pedigree to come take things forward. It's a big legacy, and you don't want to plummet from where you are at the moment, where finishing top four isn't quite the issue for Liverpool. Challenging for the title, being up top, that's the big challenge. So you need somebody with pedigree, somebody with proven credentials to then be taking over.
Yeah, I know. I will say two more things. Like in conclusion to this, I think it's a big loss for the Premier League because again, you've lost a manager, world class, up there right now with one of the best in the world, or right up there, and someone who also was very good for a soundbite. I mean, let's not forget he was comedy gold in his press conferences. Whether or not he intended to be at times is a whole different matter. But he was someone who definitely gave you a quotable or two when the time came about. And I think the Premier League will be poorer not having him around. And I also see that the big opportunity for clubs who are trying to get to Liverpool's spot. Again, it was very hard to reach City, but don't forget that most clubs have struggled to even challenge Liverpool's status as the second best team in England right now. But with a managerial change this big happening, it potentially opens doors for a lot of other clubs. I'm thinking United, potentially a Chelsea in a couple of seasons, even clubs like Arsenal, or for that matter, clubs who are suddenly making surges up the team table, like a Villa. Remember, they're in the top four right now. It's a big opportunity because again, Liverpool could potentially find a continuity candidate who take them forward. Conversely, they could find someone who'll take them further down the table. So it's an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was that. Shane and I tried putting together things as to how how big a challenge, let's say, Liverpool have. In case you're joining us right now, I'm sure the news has already traveled to you. We've tried discussing as to how big a hole this is for Liverpool to fill. Who could be the possible candidates? We've talked about all those issues. You know that Liverpool are going to be faced with going forward. Can they, in fact, to begin with, first get hold of of the EFL Cup, which is to happen in just about a month's time, and then possibly look at a transition from there, and maybe that could be the start of an ideal send off for Jurgen Klopp,
Hmm.
because every game now at Anfield, you can expect it to be a fiery and a bouncy affair, because every game is now going to have the backdrop of Jurgen Klopp leaving. And given his contribution, given the fact that he put an end to 3 decades of pain for the club, he is about to get a hero's sort of a farewell. So interesting times at the Anfield, and we'll keep you posted with everything on this developing story. But thank you so much for joining us on this particular stream.